Please note that this content is for educational purposes and for adults only. Viewer discretion advised. More details available in the description box. Hello everyone and welcome back to another live stream with me, Grizzly K. This is Grizzly True Crime, and we are back to talk about the Nichole Rice trial that we've been watching. We're going to have a very special guest joining us in just a moment. For those of you who didn't watch the trial with me, please know the replay is always there. Everything is defluffed for you, time-stamped. You can go and check it out anytime. There were some key moments, like obviously the opening statements and closing arguments that I would recommend watching, and maybe some of the testimony as well. So just a quick recap for those who didn't see it. One, you can expand the description box, find a link to the playlist, and you'll find everything there. But basically, Anita Knutson was 18 years old. That's the victim in this case. And she was murdered in June of 2007. Her dad discovered her body because her parents hadn't heard from her all weekend on June 4th of 2007. And then her case went cold for 15 years. And then cold justice, the team would be Kelly Siegler and retired homicide detective Steve Spingola. And their cold justice team came in to help Minot PD to reassess the case and organize everything. They didn't have the resources needed to solve the case. And so they came in and they eventually, the Minot PD, decided they have enough to arrest the roommate, Nichole Rice. And so on March 22nd of March 16th of 2022, Nichole Rice was arrested and charged with Class AA felony murder. So she was charged with her roommate's murder, right? She bonded out and she didn't then spend any time in jail before this trial started. And the opening statement started on March 18th of 2025. And she had private attorneys, apparently that her parents had paid for. And well, they did a really good job defending their client. And so after 6 days of trial, the verdict was reached. And that was today. If you didn't watch it, don't worry, you can go check it out on the playlist. So there will be spoilers because the verdict has been reached. Nichole Rice was found not guilty. And that to some was a shock, to others not so much. I was very concerned throughout this trial, just based on how the state presented, their case. It just was it was sad because we just didn't see the fight that we sometimes see, for the victim and their families. And it was sad. But anyway, so here we are. That's what we have. Now, let me just quickly tell you a little bit about our guest here. I'm sure you know Josh Ritter from Courtroom Confidential. But check out this little description here. Josh Ritter, the host of Courtroom Confidential. You can find the link to his channel in the description box. And you're also going to be teleported to his live stream that's coming up later after this. He is a seasoned criminal defense attorney and legal analyst based in Los Angeles, California. He brings a wealth of experience to his work, having spent nearly a decade as a prosecutor with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office before transitioning to private practice. During his time as a prosecutor, he handled complex and high-profile cases, achieving a felony conviction rate of over 90% and earning the title of Outstanding Prosecutor of the Year in 2015 from the Association of Deputy District Attorneys. I've got my cheat sheet here, my crib notes here, you guys, that I've written before this, in case you're wondering, what's she reading from? My own cheat sheet here. Okay, so beyond his legal experience, Josh Ritter is a prominent voice in the true crime and legal commentary space. He hosts Courtroom Confidential, a weekly show and podcast where he breaks down headline-making criminal cases across the U.S., offering insights drawn from his dual perspective as a former prosecutor and current defense attorney. See, that's why we need him on the show. He's going to be able to have a great conversation with us about this trial and just the strategies that we saw and the outcome and things like that. So basically, if you haven't seen him, he's also on True Crime Daily, now called True Crime News' Sidebar Podcast. I've been a guest there with him twice. That was fun. And so the rest you'll see on his channel. So now let's bring him up. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. That introduction had me blushing. I appreciate it. That was very nice.
Sorry to make you blush. Let me show them quickly your channel while I was talking about you. So here is Josh's channel. It's called Courtroom Confidential, and you can subscribe over there. There's lots of Grizzlies over there. So if you're missing me, then you'll probably find me over there in the chat as well. Although I'm often on replay crew because, you know, Josh is West Coast America. Your time zone is very different to mine.
Right.
But here he's got a live stream coming up today. Gigi from Pretty Lies and Alibis will be there as well. They're talking Idaho. So you're going to be teleported there. And yeah, go and check out his content as well. He's got videos. You could see I've been a guest on here too. There I am. Mm-hmm. So you could see me over there. And if you
the interview we did with you, where we got your entire background, that was one of our
pretty
popular, one of our most popular there it is, right there.
So just joking, it's like the most, okay, you guys, known.
Get it
just kidding. But if you didn't know, if you want to know a bit more about my background, yes, guys, Josh literally he picked my brain over here. So you can go check it out if you've never seen him before. You can also see his website, thecourtroomconfidential.com. And I believe this is where you can leave. Look here, send a voice. That's for Sundays, right?
Yeah, for this coming Sunday, in fact, we do this fun thing where you can leave a voice message and ask me a question about a case or, anything you're curious about, and we answer them live on Sundays, and it's really fun. I mean, you get to hear people all over the world, all these different accents, and some of the questions are just stuff I never would have thought to talk about. I mean, in the same episode, we'll be talking about Charlie Manson, and then we'll be talking about, Brian Koberger, because it's just, anybody, whatever comes into your mind. It's been a really fun thing that we've tried.
Yeah, and I like when people leave you multi-part messages. You're like, okay, that's part one. Now we're getting to part two.
They don't get enough in the first question, so they got round two. Yeah,
that is a whole story. They take you on a deep dive. Exactly. So if you guys want to go leave some voice notes over there, obviously Josh will filter them. Don't be naughty now. Oh yeah, Grizzly represent. Okay, and then maybe you'll be part of the Sunday show. Yeah. Okay, I guess a good place to start would actually be to show this, which I'm sure you've seen this wild moment today where the verdict was read. Like, oh my word. So Grizzlies and Josh, let's just quickly watch this one more time. It's very short.
The jury duly impaneled and sworn find the defendant Nichole Aaron Rice not guilty of the information dated at Grand Forks, North Dakota, this 26th day of March.
Oh my word. And now that was quite something. Hey, have you seen that? I know there have been trials, of course. People are bringing up the ASAP Rocky trial, but what did you think of that?
I will tell you, I have seen reactions like this in court. And here's the thing about it. One, it's so funny because Tiffany stopped me dead in my tracks, my wife, today, and said, you got to watch this, just to show me that clip that you just showed me. Because she was like, can you believe that? Because I think we're so used to watching court and everybody's kind of trying to maintain decorum and everything else. And then you see this reaction. Here's my thoughts about that. First of all, is it inappropriate? I mean, you could argue that, like, yes, listen, this is not the place for that kind of reaction. Also, I think about the victim's family. Are they sitting there and hearing all of this happen? And now, now they're just realizing that, again, their loved one will not receive any kind of justice and closure. And I hate to use that word, but just whatever they need for their healing process is not going to take place that day. And so it's an awful moment for them. So my heart goes out to them. But, you got to think too, this woman was looking, it's trials are like nothing else, I think, that we experience, where it comes down to literally one moment and one or two words to come out of that court clerk or that juror's mouth that is going to affect that person's future for the rest of their life. So she's sitting there, and you see the way they're all embraced and waiting for that moment. There's really nothing else like it. And so it's like her family and her loved ones and everyone, I think they just could simply not help themselves. They're not thinking about anything else but the idea that they get their loved one back now, and they're not going to lose them to prison for the rest of it, right? I mean, she was looking at going away to prison for the rest of her life.
Yes.
It's really, I think that's why we're so interested in this world of true crime and why we watch these trials. I cannot think of another place where it is everything comes down to just one moment on that verdict, and how will that end up? And the drama cannot be replicated or explained if you haven't experienced it or watched it.
Right. And I mean, we felt as an audience here at Grizzly True Crime, this trial could go either way. It really was like sort of 50-50, but every poll I ran, it was like, maybe, 30-40% think, okay, guilty. And then 30% would say not guilty. And then the others are like hung jury, or I really don't know. We just had no idea. I could see it could go either way. But man, I mean, that reaction, I think everyone is kind of feeling snarky about the defense attorney's reaction. I understand Nichole Rice's reaction and her family. That makes sense. But for the defense attorneys to treat it like they just won a sports match, I don't know, that made me a little uncomfortable. How about you?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. It should never look like a victory in the sense of like, yeah, you won a championship or something. Like there is still the acknowledgement that somebody's dead, right? I mean, win or lose, there's still the tragedy of someone lost their life. And whether or not the jurors felt that was your client or not, it may not be the moment for that kind of celebration. I can understand the relief, and I can understand the idea that, you know, all of this anxiety is building up in that moment of release. But yeah, if you start high-fiving people and stuff like that, I really think it begins to be inappropriate.
Yeah, just a little bit, even though I do understand that they did work very hard for their client. I've said throughout the trial, my word, they really are fighting. And we just didn't see the fight from the state. We didn't see that in this case. And I just don't know why. Like, I felt like, are they overconfident? Or are they not interested? Or why? Why do you think that happens? And what would they do now that a not guilty verdict has been reached? Like, they've lost the case. So how does that work for them?
The answer to your second part of your question is nothing. I mean, there's absolutely nothing to do now. They cannot, that's it. She cannot be tried again. There is no appealing this. The double jeopardy has attached. She is forever free. And just to go you one further, she's forever free no matter what she does. I mean, if she gives an interview and says, yeah, I actually did take part, I mean, there's nothing that can be done now. A jeopardy has attached to her, right? She's been tried and acquitted for this murder. But for the prosecution, do they now, I know there were alternative suspects. Listen, it took them 15 years to put together a case on what they felt was their best suspect. I think this case is over, which to me is really tragic. One of the things that bothered me most about this case is I couldn't understand the delay, because what as far as I knew, what they brought to trial was very much so the same evidence that they had within days of the murder. So what exactly transpired over the last 15 years that caused them to bring these charges? Many times in these cold, quote unquote, cold cases, it will be something where some new DNA breakthrough happens, or some witness comes forward that didn't have the courage to come forward after decades, or some break in the evidence, or it's a matter of they always knew who did it and now they found the person, But in this case, it was they just didn't feel they had enough, and years went on, and then a decade, and then a decade and a half. And then I guess a lot of people point towards this TV show saying, hey, what are we doing here? Bring these charges. And they did. And maybe now we understand why they waited so long, because they really just didn't have the case.
Do you think there would be pressure to take this to trial, even just based on the TV show, which has experienced people? So people, the defense was making like it's Hollywood rolling in, but it's like a experienced former prosecutor and retired homicide detective that helped the Minot Police out to, reassess the case, and they came in with resources. But, for context, let's call it a TV show. Do you think when the TV show came in and said, well, you have enough to charge the roommate, do you think they felt pressure, or couldn't they have said, we can't take this to trial? I mean, why would they decide to do it and then make so little effort by what we saw?
I would really hope that they wouldn't be pressured by any kind of TV show that comes out, but I think that's me being a little hopeful and naive. I think that these, prosecutors' offices, the head person in charge is a politician. They're usually an elected person. And that person is thinking about how are people viewing him and his contingency, his voters. And it may be that just there was enough kind of public outcry and pressure that they said, let's take another really hard look at this and let's give this one a shot. Now, the reason why I say I hope not is, having been a prosecutor, I always feel like you should be guided by the evidence. And if you feel like you have the evidence, then file the case. No matter how difficult it might be, file that case if you feel like you can prove it. But if you don't feel like you can prove it, courtrooms are not the place to gamble. They're not the place to say, well, let's see if we can do it. Let's give it a shot. That's not being a real badass. That's just being playing fast and loose with people's lives. I mean, you should feel there was never a case I stepped into a courtroom where I did not feel confident that I had the evidence to prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I'm sad to admit I didn't win every single one of my cases. I won most of them. But even in the cases where there was a not guilty, I did not walk in there feeling like I didn't have the evidence. It's just the jurors saw it differently.
Yeah, I mean, at least it sounds like you brought your A game. In this
Right.
case, the state, I don't understand their take on it. Like, they just really didn't fight for the victim or their family. They didn't even show one photograph, one physical exhibit. They didn't show the window screen. They didn't show the knife. They didn't show like the bedding or anything. Like, why would they do that? Aren't visual aids helpful for the jury as well?
Yeah, that's baffling to me. I think visual aids are incredibly helpful to the jury, and we live in a day and age where they become more and more important to the jury. And I mean, when I was a prosecutor, I would try to use photographs whenever I could. I mean, it's like, even if they're not all that, consequential, show a photograph of the house, just so they know where we're talking about. Show a photograph of the entrance to the home, just so they know. Get a layout of it. You're telling a story. I mean, part of being a good trial advocate is being able to tell a good story. And how do you tell a good story if you cannot paint a picture for people? And the best way to paint a picture is to show them those photographs. So I don't get that part of it at all. As far as their level of enthusiasm and advocacy, I guess, not all trial attorneys are created equal, and there's going to be some better than others. But you would hope that even the less dramatic, theatrical attorneys would still be able to prove their case. But, if jurors pick up on the idea that you don't really seem to care about this, then why should they care? I mean, that's a really good point to think about. If you don't care about your own case, then why should these 12 people who've taken times out of their lives to sit here, why should they care?
That's how it felt, and how they didn't even show really the layout of the room, like quick body cam, one walkthrough, a reenactment, which the lead detective said on the case, she'd only read some of the file and that she didn't really think the reenactment was effective. Like, so the little bit that you show, the lead detective you then bring on is like, nah, I don't think that was effective. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening here? It was really...
And we're not talking about, like, I don't expect them to go out and do some sort of, laser mapped 3D profile of the room and everything. You don't need all that. But if we're getting to the point where you can't even show some photographs and paint to, put together the most basic of evidence on the case, then yeah, I could see jurors just kind of being like, turning to themselves and being like, what am I doing here? I'm missing my kid's recital, and I've got work, and I don't have time for this if you don't care about it.
Exactly. So they reached their verdict in 5.5 hours, which was over 2 days. So yesterday they went until maybe 8 p.m. or so, and then they came back, and within 40 minutes they had a verdict. And that was pretty fast, actually, to get to then not guilty. And I think it would, in my opinion, be because they're like, well, why should we care if the state doesn't care? We don't even have a timeline. The state was so busy in their closing arguments, which the one attorney did the closing argument and the rebuttal, which was also different to see. So we can talk about that as well, if that's a good strategy or not. But they were so busy pointing out, like still busy eliminating persons of interest, rather than pointing out why this person was charged with a crime and why they believe she's guilty. I think they were just like, there's no way that you can't have that responsibility on your shoulders and be like, we're going to send this person to prison for the rest of their life, take this mother away from her children based on this. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah. And there's something too about spending too much of your time as a prosecutor trying to rebut the defense's case. I think you need to address the defense arguments, but if you're spending the lion's share of your argument trying to argue against their arguments, then there's a I guess there's an argument to be made that you might be breathing too much life into those arguments, right? You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
the more you talk about why they shouldn't pay attention to something, the more they seem to kind of pay attention to it. And maybe that strategy backfired a little bit because, you know, if the prosecution is all that concerned, maybe they should be concerned too. As far as the speed of the verdict, you know, there's kind of a tried and true theory that a faster verdict usually means a conviction, and that's not always the case, but it's kind of what people believe. And I think that's because the idea is that if you've gone through a long trial, the prosecution, if they've done their job right, has been building this case from the very beginning, that by the end of it, you're fully convinced and you go back there and you don't have a problem arriving at a verdict. But in a case where it's a not guilty, now it's like there's a bit more debate, and they're trying to figure out how much of this, you know, did they reach that burden? And you could understand why there would be a struggle. Here, I don't, you know, 5.5 hours, but I really don't know how much of that you can count, because it sounds like they probably all turned to themselves and said, well, you know what, let's go ahead and sleep on it and see if we feel the same way tomorrow, right? And so they may have even arrived at this conclusion the night before, said, let's sleep on it, come back tomorrow. If we all feel the same way, then we'll go ahead and let the judge know that we're ready. And it sounds like that's maybe what they did.
They had coffee, they walked in, they had their verdict, like, we're ready. Yeah. We are fine. We slept on it. We're okay with this. And I mean, I really can't blame them. I think based on what the state presented, the jury got it right. But does it mean that Nichole didn't commit this murder? That's a good question that many people have.
That's a great question. And there is sometimes a very wide divide between the question of did they do it and can you prove it? And I've spent my entire career dealing with that question, right? Is, you know, the burden of beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest standard that we have for proof in the United States. And it is a very high burden. And it's explaining to people, you know, every jurisdiction tries to explain it differently, and there's no real definition for it, but it's the idea that you have an abiding conviction, the idea that you believe in something and you believe that your belief you feel is so kind of foundational that you're going to feel the same way about it now that you will tomorrow, and a week from now, and a month from now, and a year from now, and 10 years from now. Will you look back on this case and still feel like you made the right decision? And if you don't feel that way, well, then maybe you do have a doubt, and maybe you do have a reasonable doubt as to the guilt or innocence of the person. But because it is such a high burden, that just statistically will mean there will be people who, you know, in the greater sense of right or wrong, did a crime, but it cannot be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's sometimes extremely frustrating.
Right. What's really scary is that the killer is still out there.
Yeah.
You know, in this case, that is very scary. The one thing that I am proud of the defense attorneys for is that they didn't victim blame. They didn't say, well, Anita could have done this to herself. Because I saw some comments after the live streams starting to think that, based on what the lack of the evidence presented, of like, wait, what if she did it to herself? Or like, what if it was one of the guys that Nichole brought home, which the state actually brought up, which wasn't great. Like, let's bring in even more reasonable doubt. Nichole brought home guys and just left them there. And so they knew the layout of the house and what? So I'm glad they didn't do that, because so often we see it with defense attorneys stooping a little low and blaming the victim fully. They didn't do that. They fought hard for their case. But even the text messages between Anita and Nichole, that would have been so critical to see the escalation in the anger and the fights between them. They read some to us, but they didn't even show it like on an Elmo, or they didn't say any dates. They didn't say that this was from April. I had to literally pull up my little presentation from my research.
That? Like, did they give any explanation as to why they weren't doing that?
No, they just said there were text messages and there was this escalation in the arguments, and let's read some of those. And they had the detective read off some of those, but with zero passion, and just saying, Okay, let's just read it. We didn't even know what the replies from Anita were. We didn't know the timeline. We didn't know when the messages were sent. Was it a year before, a week before, days before? What is it? That's really shocking. Yeah,
it's all the more we're talking about this, and the more you're explaining too, you begin to wonder if the blame for this shouldn't fall at the feet of the prosecutors, because if they had the evidence and they just presented it so poorly, that to me is inexcusable, right? Now we're not talking about burden of proof and all of that stuff. Now we're just talking about dropping the ball. And that is, you have such a heavy responsibility as a prosecutor for you to just phone it in so much that you may have had the evidence, but you just failed to present it properly. That's really inexcusable. If that is in fact what took place here.
Because that's what bothers me. I mean, we don't want a Monday morning quarterback. It just bothers me that why, if you had it and you waited 17 years, here we are 17 years later, it's going to trial. You had plenty of time to prepare. Why don't you show it, make it obvious? Like Stefan's saying, and the judge allowed a presentation when they had the lead detective on in the case. He allowed a presentation. They had a break, so the judge had to go off, make a decision, came back, said, okay, I will allow it. And then the state said, never mind, it's fine. I'll just use it in my closing arguments. We were like, what? And it really seemed to deflate the testimony from the lead detective, because now she had no point of reference. She had to just from her memory, just kind of rattle off some of the text messages and,
why
just
do
have
that to
nothing.
Your detective too?
Yeah.
Why leave your detective alone on an island up there with no help? Yeah. I mean,
and just open to attacks from the defense, which happened because there's been like investigations into the police department. They were talking about all sorts of corruption and the chief, all of that. And so the defense, they grilled that detective, but the state just left her so vulnerable. There was she could have had a presentation. And from the closing argument presentation we saw, no, those weren't included. There wasn't that timeline that they were going to refer to during a testimony. So
I'm sure that detective is furious too. Like,
she looked it.
You can't throw me up there and then just abandon me like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really uncomfortable to watch because I'm sure if she had her, the things to refresh her recollection and all of that, just to go over the text and the timelines, it would have just come across so much better. Shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
My word. I quickly want to read what Anita Knutson's sister had posted on Facebook. Thank you to the Grizzly who sent me this. Her name is Anna Knutson Tutor, and she said a Grizzly is a little bit small, but it's strange feeling to stand in a courtroom and hear the verdict come in for your murdered sister and watch a group of smug, arrogant people scream so loud that you can hear their vocal cords strain. I don't know that I will ever forget that sound, but I hope I do. I suppose I'm not sure why I was surprised by the reaction from a group of people who showed us from the moment they walked into the courtroom that they were fiercely juvenile. There's no decorum from people who will gleefully spit in your face. On the other side of the courtroom, my heart hit the ground. I felt it in every part of my body, even my bones. The room felt small and like it was getting smaller by the second. I got out there as fast as I could. I went straight to the bathroom and almost tripped on my bag trying to catch my breath. I counted 4, 3, 2, 1, over and over until I could calm down. I spent the last week reliving some of the hardest parts of the last 18 years of my life. And in those 18 years, one thing I've learned is that a not guilty verdict does not mean innocence. I cannot say the same for many of the people in that room, but my conscience is clear, she said. All I saw were crocodile tears. Shame. Imagine on the family. Sure, they've been advocating for Anita for so long.
Yeah, that's really heartbreaking. I mean, like I said, these people are going home with a loss that they still won't recover from, and even regardless of how the turnout, they're still never going to recover from that loss. But now those wounds have had, salt poured on them by the reaction of everyone. I didn't realize that there was such kind of animosity between everyone as well, but that's really awful to hear.
Yes. And shame. Her dad is 90 years old and he took the stand, and her mom is 80 years old and she took the stand to bring these people out there at their age. They look great, and they did so well, but do they not even show evidence? Like, why don't they show the screen? The window screen was very important in this case because it's about, was an intruder, did they enter through the window or not? And it can only be someone with the key. So why would the state not present the physical screen? Do you think it's because they don't have it anymore because it's been so long, or would they have it?
It could be that. It could be that they don't have it. I mean, it really depends on, you're talking 15 years. It really depends on what evidence they decided to actually, seize and store. But 15 years ago, we weren't living in caveman days. I mean, we still had, cameras, right? They still, I imagine, did a very thorough forensic analysis and photographs of the entire murder scene. And so the idea that, yeah, you may not have the screen, but you should be able to show me plenty of photographs of everything else. Not to tell war stories here, but when I was a prosecutor, I had a murder case from the early 1980s, and we had nothing, as far as evidence and everything that had preserved, but at least we had some photographs, and you can be sure I showed them those old photographs. And on top of it, I went out to the scene more recently and took new photographs. So it's like, hey, it's obviously changed. Here's how it looked. Here's how it looks now. But it's like, you're right, to just not introduce it is mind-boggling to me.
It really is, especially all those factors. Like even me as a YouTuber, I'd be like, whoa, okay, the dad is like 90, the mom is like 80. They're there in court every day. They're spending their time and energy. They've been advocating. Like if I'm covering a case, which obviously was, I want to do it with passion. I want to show them we've got your back. It's okay. Like you can count on us, but for the state to not do that, and then to, on top of that, have the extra factor of cameras in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Even that didn't really inspire them. They just sat as well, which is actually a question the Grizzlies had throughout. Why do some defense attorneys just sit the whole time, which the state did the whole time, both of them, while questioning witnesses, where the defense, they got up, they were animated, they were pointing, Nichole didn't do this, they were doing things. I think that could be a really good strategy to use your body language, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there's obviously a art to all of this. There's obviously going to be a difference in the presentation from the attorney. And I tend to think that doesn't have as much of an effect as we might think it does, because I think ultimately jurors are more guided by the evidence, or at least I hope that they are. But that's subconscious stuff that, again, it's like, how are you getting them enthusiastic about a case if you don't even appear to be enthusiastic about it yourself? And something is just starkly different as they remain seated as opposed to the other side getting up and being a little bit more animated. Sure.
It just adds to all of it. It was just all of it, the totality of all of that. And, some people said during the trial, how are they going to stand up for the victim when they can't even actually stand up in the courtroom? They're not even physically standing up. But then some said, well, what if they both have health problems? What if they can't stand for long? Then say it. Say, I'm so sorry, we can't stand up right now, but let's ask these questions so that even the jury needs to understand, because they just sat there like, how do you know? And the questions were like, why did you do that? And the defense destroyed them. On cross-examination, they asked such interesting questions. We, as an audience, learned so much more about the case from the cross-examination. Isn't that scary? Wow. Yeah.
I mean, there is part of being a good trial attorney, I think, is understanding that there is a performance and there is some drama involved, and that, I think you can take that overboard. And I think some attorneys are bad with it, and they don't read the room and they get a little too theatrical and dramatic. But if just projecting enthusiasm and confidence in a case and caring about a case is probably the bare minimum you should be doing. And if you're not doing that, then how can you expect the jurors to feel differently?
Yeah, they're just people, and they're just looking at what they can. What else was interesting is that the state said, because we didn't see any police video interviews. I mean, they have those of the defendant, who is now free, of what do we call her now? Just Nichole. Of Nichole. They had police video interviews of her, and they had photos, of course, and everything. And they said, the jury will have that when they deliberate. we didn't get to see it. They didn't even get to see it throughout the trial. So to be like, don't worry, the room that you're going to go to is full of exhibits. You can just look through that if you want. I mean, must they solve the case by themselves? It's a bit strange.
Yeah, and it's like, what? You don't want to take the time? Like, what are we rushing you to get this case done that you don't want to take the time to present that to us? Again, I think what you have is, if you've got jurors back there who are battling, much like your audience was, right? It sounds like your audience was struggling with this case to begin with.
Yeah.
Well, if they're back there and they're struggling with it to begin with, and then there's just this kind of lack of enthusiasm to do the right thing for the victim in this case, because the prosecutor doesn't seem to care all that much, then why should you?
Yeah. And also, use your resources. So it brings me back to the question from earlier. If you have a resource, you have two people. I mean, the defense attorneys were also brothers, two of them, but the state. There's a female, there's a male. There's two different perspectives to offer. Why, in the state's closing arguments, would you just leave it up to one person to do it? Isn't it better to take turns so the jury can hear, or not? Is it not a strategy?
No, that's a great point. And I'm glad that you caught that. So, I mean, there's no rule about it, obviously. They can handle it however they like. But usually when you've got two prosecutors on a case, or even two defense attorneys, you might split it up between the defense. One attorney will do the opening statements, another attorney will do the closing arguments. But usually the prosecution, because they have their closing and then their rebuttal argument, they'll split those up too. And my experience is that it's usually the senior or more experienced lead prosecutor will do the rebuttal argument, because that's kind of the last word that anyone's going to hear. Again, I don't know if it's, I mean, I can't see an advantage to not doing it. You would think there would be more advantage from them hearing a couple of people present the same evidence. But again, it might go towards that whole thing of maybe it just looked like they were just kind of phoning the whole thing in and just weren't even all that enthusiastic about it. I don't know. It's another, they certainly did not come out of this thing looking good.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it helped their career much. Yeah. Oh dear. I'm going to express an opinion in a moment, but I do want to welcome Tim Storstad. Says, I was in the jury. You were on the jury, Tim? Tim, welcome. If you want to reach out to me, my email is grizzlytruecrime@gmail.com. Any jurors that were on this case, if you're watching and you want to come talk to us, come and tell us. Tell us what you thought, because don't worry, we were frustrated as well. So back to sharing my opinion on the state's closing arguments. So again, disclaimer, it's my opinion only. the snark alert, a little bit. I'll try to rein it in. But basically, the lady, Tiffany Sorgan, who did the closing arguments, was the one who was a little bit less enthusiastic about the case. And her co-counsel, Christopher Nelson, wow, he really got his snarky pants going. When the defense presented their case, his cross-examination was brilliant. Like, he really picked it up. He said he had strep throat at the trial initially, so maybe he didn't feel well. And we're like, whoa, look at him go. That's what I mean. If he has that passion, he's coming alive, he's showing things, why can't he do the rebuttal? I didn't understand. I'm like, why would you not? Why he's just got a bounce in his step all of a sudden. Here he is. Oh man, we were so disappointed as an audience just to see that.
You know what, too? This is obviously a case where I imagine it's going to go to some more seasoned and experienced prosecutors in that office. Because one, it is a murder case. Two, it's a cold case. And three, it's a media heavy case. So you would think that even in a smaller prosecutor's office, they're going to go to their top attorneys, right? They're their go-to trial attorneys. I mean, are we to believe that's who these people are? I don't want to be snarky either, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. But if everything that you're describing and we saw, I can't imagine that was the best of the best that office had to offer.
Like, I'm just still trying to understand. I mean, most of us feel like quite traumatized by it. Like, why would you? I don't know. So it was the assistant Ward County state attorneys, Tiffany Sorgan and Christopher Nelson. That was the state. And it's just like, oh my word. So it was very sad. And I don't know, maybe they weren't convinced. Maybe they weren't convinced themselves. But then why on earth take it to trial?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. If you are not convinced, then your job as a prosecutor is not to take it to trial. I mean, that's one of the heavy responsibilities of being a prosecutor is you're a gatekeeper. And if you don't feel that you can prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, you don't have confidence in the case, then you should do the right thing and not bring it. And I don't care if it's been 15 years, and I don't care if Cold Justice came out with an episode about it or what pressure you got. Do the right thing and say, we can't prove this. I don't believe in this case.
Yes, exactly that. Then express yourself, set your boundaries and say, well, that's great. That was a nice show, but I can't. We deliberately just can't take this to trial. It seemed like that might have been the case. It just, they don't seem to believe what they're saying themselves. Shame. Objection Cake says 18-year-old case, and what did they reach? Exhibit 26. Yeah, literally, I mean, there were only 100 photos in the case as well, they said. But really, as you said on your episode, if you didn't know, on Courtroom Confidential, Josh actually spoke about this case 4 days ago, and he's got some excellent insight then already, before the verdict was reached. So go check it out on the replay if you missed it. But you also saying, what changed? What was new? After 15 years, what on earth evidence did they have? And we were waiting. We were like, oh my word, they must have something.
Right.
They've got it. They really didn't. They really didn't. How shocking is that? Oh my goodness. Yeah. Julie said family and public pressure.
It just gets worse after 15 years, right? I mean, people's memories are going to be bad. The officers' memories are going to be bad. The medical examiner, everybody does it. It's not like it got better. So I really want to know, the more we talk about it, the more it sounds like the thing I don't want to admit is that maybe it was pressure. Maybe it was public sentiment. Maybe it was that Cold Justice episode that just really, they felt like they had to do it, in which case that's the wrong decision in my view.
Got to trust your gut, right?
Yeah.
Even on that level, you got to trust your gut. If you really don't feel like, oh my word, I can't convict this person, they don't.
Yeah.
They didn't though. They didn't. Yeah. Everyone's saying, gee, Tim has emailed you. Thank you, Tim, who was on the jury apparently. Thank you for emailing me. I will read your email after the show. And I look forward to hopefully speaking to you.
Wow.
So in the cases that you prosecuted, when you unfortunately did not win the case, what do you say to the family?
Yeah, well, fortunately, I can say I didn't have to do it all that much. But in the cases that I did, it's real difficult. It is really difficult because there are people who, they've been counting on someone kind of fighting for them for a long time. And first of all, I'll say this. And it works the same way as a defense attorney too. Sometimes you're having very, very difficult conversations with family members of your client who's going off to prison for a very long time. And one thing I always tell, whether they're clients or they're victims, family, is that you never know what a jury is going to do. There is no solid bet in all of this. As much as confident as you can feel about a case, or even cases where I didn't feel all that confident, you will be surprised sometimes by what the jury thinks about it and the results that come. So one thing is to always prepare yourself for the idea that this may not turn out the way that you think it will. But I think that, you try to explain to them that you did your best, that we put our best foot forward, that we gave this everything we had, and they just simply did not see it the same way. And that the burden of proof is very high, and they don't feel that we reached it. Now, I say all of that, but I don't know if with this case all of that applies, because if it doesn't look like they've tried their best and gave it all they had, then I think that the conversation that they're having with these families is probably very uncomfortable.
And do they have to have a conversation, or do you think, because they said the family walked out afterwards when that whole celebration was going on, the family walked out. The cameras didn't even show them. So I was wondering what happened there, but I read that they just walked out. So would they even be required? That would obviously be etiquette, but would they have to talk to them?
There's no law that requires that they do, but just decency and doing your job would say that you should speak with them. Yeah, that's really sad. It's so sad that these poor folks have to go home now, and it's almost like it's now even worse than it was before, right? Because now their best chance has walked out the door a free person, and they're probably never going to see an opportunity again.
Right. I know I said I'd keep you here for 30 to 45. Just one or two more questions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
One or two more questions. What was the one? Oh, what do you think about the defense being able to, so the judge allowed so many alternate suspect theories to be brought in? That was interesting. Obviously, for example, Delphi, we didn't see that. None of that was allowed. But this was like, whoa, there were so many. They could actually just mention them all.
Yeah, I was a little shocked by that. Every jurisdiction handles that a little bit different, and I'm not sure as to what the applicable kind of law is in this jurisdiction. And it's at the end of the day, it's a judgment call by the judge. But usually the concept is that you have to have evidence to support why the jurors should consider some alternative beyond just suspicion, by the way. I mean, if the level were suspicion, that would open up nearly the whole world, right? Because you can, in this case, they were able to put, oh, hey, well, this person had a problem with them, and that person owned a knife that looked like it might have been similar, and whatever else you want to do to kind of throw things against the wall. But that's not what trials are about. They're not about confusing the jury. They're about, presenting, if there is some. The question is there someone who is such a viable suspect that the police not pursuing that is something that the jury should consider, right? Is the fact that the police didn't look into this other person important enough that the jury should know about it in their consideration of the case? And apparently the judge felt that was kind of anybody, which, who knows what role that played with these jurors. You are talking about a 15-year-old case. They might have been having a discussion about, well, why do you think it took them so long? Well, it took them so long because they couldn't decide who did it, and they just picked one person. Exactly.
So, it was, I think from the defense side, it was actually pretty effective because some of the arguments were quite plausible. Some of them made us go, what if it is that person, throughout the trial? Southern Kelly B says, I honestly don't think the judge was convinced either. Yeah, we were just reading the room there, but is he convinced? What is happening here? So Tim, who was on the jury, allegedly, I say that, okay, Tim, thank you for your email. You said, we had pictures of the weapon, the screen, and of the apartment and its layout. I was on the jury, so at least they got pictures. Why didn't they show it during the trial? We were shown pictures of the screen. We were shown the screen. Interesting. I wonder if they saw the physical screen. But that's so weird as a strategy to be like, when you go off to deliberate, everything you need to see in the case is there.
So that's something I don't understand. Is he saying that stuff was admitted into evidence that was never shown during the trial, but they had back in evidence?
Yes, we didn't even see them, then during trials, obviously, but when I watched, then it's like, okay, we're going to submit this. Some of it can be a bit tedious, when it's like hundreds of exhibits or pieces of evidence. And we're like, okay, we didn't see any of that.
Yeah, none. I've never heard of that. Usually it is that tedious. If you want to get in 100 different photographs, then you're going to have some time during trial where you're just going, okay, now exhibit number 32, exhibit number 33, because that's the only way you get it admitted is that you have to have someone testify to the foundation and admissibility of that. I mean, I'm trying to stretch my imagination. Perhaps you could stipulate ahead of time that between you and the parties that, exhibits A through 100 are admissible, but then never present those to the jurors. It's just bizarre to me. And then expect them, like you said, to go do the work themselves.
Go solve the case, guys.
We got a big book of pictures back there. Go ahead and take a look. Let us know if you got questions.
Yeah, everything you heard, just heard us say, it's back there. Look at.
Right.
Oh my word. And we were like, hey, we want to see. I mean, normally there's all the paper bags and like them opening it and all the, I mean, they didn't even show the alleged murder weapon. I say alleged because, I mean, they say this is the murder weapon. How do you know? What if there was a different knife and then the person put that there? We don't know, but you didn't even show that. It was just all back there. Shame, man. The poor jury.
Yeah, that's bad. That's bad. That's phoning it in. That's I've said it so many times now, but it's like you got to care about it if you expect them to care about it.
Exactly. So do you think the jury got it right in this trial based on what the state presented? It doesn't mean that, based on did they prove it or not? No, they didn't. Do you think they got it right?
I think the jurors did their job. And they're presented with a very singular question. Is there enough evidence to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt? And that is their job. Their job isn't to do the right thing. Their job isn't to bring justice. Their job isn't to solve a mystery. Their job is to decide, did the prosecution present enough evidence that I believe this beyond a reasonable doubt? It's the prosecution's job to give them that evidence and convince them of that and get them that far. But if the prosecution doesn't do it, then their job is to say not guilty. I mean, we talk about this many times, and it's amazing to me how many times with jurors in voir dire, people always seem to get this wrong. But we talk about the presumption of innocence, right? And we'll say to people in voir dire, right now, if I asked you to give me a verdict, what would your verdict be? Before the trial has started, what would your verdict be? And many people, thinking they're being very conscientious, will say, well, I don't know because I haven't heard anything. And they're thinking, well, listen, I got to hear something before you ask me to make a decision. And that's wrong. The answer is not guilty. You start out with not guilty. If you haven't heard anything, then it's not guilty. It's up to the prosecution to get you beyond a reasonable doubt. So these jurors obviously did not feel that the prosecution got them past that burden, and they did their job. And that might have been a difficult job for them to do.
Yeah, go back to the deliberation room and find out who done it.
Right.
They're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not their job. So I do think they got it right based on what the state presented. And I do think the defense attorneys, even though they did some things that are a little bit like, oh dear, like the celebration and things that people like, I don't like the approach, or their closing arguments were a little aggressive. I think they fought really hard for their client and they won, rightfully so.
Yeah.
Yes. Was there one more question I had for you? What is it? What was the one more question I had for you? Oh, yeah. Crash D said the state barely mentioned Anita's name, and that was in the closing. They said that girl, this girl, that body. Ooh,
the prosecution did that.
Yes. That was so distancing. They said her name a few times, but then they said, this knife stabbed that girl. And like that body was taken out of that house. We were like, whoa, that is so shocking.
That's inexcusable to me. No, you're the voice of the victims, right? You have to be.
Yes, you have to be.
If you are not humanizing the victim in your own case, come on. Yeah, wow. Again, I really try my best to not throw attorneys under the bus, but a lot of this does not sound excusable to me.
No, and sometimes thank you so much for being here so we could pick your brain so we could try to understand from a legal perspective, like, why does this happen? How does it happen? Is it okay? It just feels a little weird. Of course. Yeah. Let me show them your channel again here. Here is Josh's channel. You want to tell us about your show that's coming up?
We're going to have Gigi on from Pretty Lies and Alibis. We're going to talk a little bit about Koberger and then some of the other cases she's been following. I think Lori Vallow and Donna Adelson, depending on how much time she's able to give us. And if you guys are around, stick around and check it out, and we'll have a great conversation. And listen, Gisela, I love coming on your show because the Grizzlies run deep. And I got to tell you, it warms my heart whenever I have you on my show, or whenever we even mention your name on my show, and I'll see all the Bears start to pop up in the comments. It makes me feel really good. So I feel very much a part of the Grizzly family, and I appreciate the support from all of you guys.
You are an honorary Grizzly. They say it all the time.
I appreciate that.
You're a VIP over here. So Grizzlies, you better be there in chat. As you guys can see, I'll be lurking because it's 1 o'clock in the morning for me. I'll be there, but I'll be lurking. Sometimes, I don't want people to know I'm up so late and say, gee, are you up so late? Yes, beady eyes in the night, watching Courtroom Confidential over here. I want to hear what you've got to say here about Koberger. Oh my word, what a case as well. Very interesting. So go and check that out. And if was it a live or a video? I just want to see quickly where you spoke about this case we talked about today. I think it was on a video. It's a video.
Our weekly roundup. Yeah.
That one. Go and check that one out as well on the replay. Share it as well. Remember to like, share, do all the things, subscribe. Let's see where you are now. 24.6. Very nice. Last time you were here, you just hit 20K.
Yeah,
nice.
We're getting close to 25. That'll be nice.
Yes,
and a lot of that because of you and the Grizzlies, so I appreciate it.
All the Bears are there. Here they come.
Exactly.
You see, you're going to see this later. You're going to see this in your chat later.
I love it.
So Everybody, thank you so much. Thank you to the juror who reached out. If there's any other jurors watching, please feel free to reach out. My email is grizzlytruecrime@gmail.com. I'm going to now teleport you all, redirect you to Josh's show later. Make sure you click notify me. I'll probably be there. I'm quite awake now. It's 11 o'clock my time now. 1 a.m. Easy. I'll be there in the chat as well. Also sharing bear emojis. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Just know, disclaimer, we really don't want a Monday morning quarterback. We just really want to discuss the importance of presentations, timelines, making it clear to the jury. I feel like that's important. That's why I say sometimes with our trial coverage, it's like a learning tool. If we don't find it clear, like what is the timeline? What is happening here? The jury won't either. Yeah. So it's very important to be passionate about your cases and present it to the jury so that they can really make a good decision, understand what the case is about and everything. But in this one, I think they got it right. Thank you, everyone, for watching the trial with me. Thank you, Josh, for being here with me. We'll see you on your channel very shortly. Let's all go say hi there already. Okay, I'll race you guys there. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.